What's good, cannabis investors? I hope you're all doing great, and I want to welcome you back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Jordan, and today we're coming at you with This Week in Cannabis News from May 6th to the 12th. Now, before we jump in, if you enjoy this video or you learn something, please just leave a like on it, as it really helps out my channel. And of course, if you want to learn how to take advantage of this generational investment opportunity, subscribe below so that you don't miss any future videos, and then there's plenty of content for you to go back, rewatch, and educate yourself with. Try to think of these videos as a time capsule. I've tried to put all the news and facts in one place so that you can watch episodes over time to learn about the evolution of the US cannabis industry, identify top US MSOs that you keep seeing pop up that you think will be worth more in the future than they are today based on their current market caps, and take advantage whenever you feel ready if you wish to do so, of course pending the big rescheduling announcement that we are waiting on. And while it's annoying to feel like we're stuck in purgatory, the clues keep rolling in, and on the bright side, MSOs look better than ever. And so we start with this one as big. New Cole memo coming with finalized rescheduling predicted by former U.S. Department Attorney General James Cole. Now, this comes from a tweet from National Cannabis Roundtable. The Cole memo author himself, former U.S. Attorney General James Cole, now a private attorney practicing at Sidley Austin, predicted last week during a media availability that the DOJ will instate some sort of parallel industry guidance, and that likely won't be issued until the rescheduling is finalized. What a cliffhanger there. And so we're going to jump back and reference this video down here, as this was from this past week, so this is actually newer than what I shared last week. So this is an interview with James Cole, former AG, and Howard Sklamberg, and this is just a good question I wanted to share a piece on. Now, if you wanted to grab the link and watch this, links will be in the comments. James Cole answers a question about the memo at about 10:30, basically saying it's coming. So
a quick follow-up from Chris too. Anyone want to take on the possible timeline from here on out, OMB, back to DOJ, comment period, and all of those elements? Do you have a realistic timeline for when you think this rescheduling process would conclude?
I'll defer to Howard on that. Yeah, so it's at the White House. You would think that'll move pretty quickly, given that the whole world knows that they're looking at it. It would be the strangest thing in the world if OMB all of a sudden were to reverse this. And so you imagine they'll do that pretty quickly. There'll be a comment period of, say, 2-3 months. And then there will be a final rule. I would suspect that I'd be very surprised if there were not a final rule this year before the administration ends, and probably before November. And that can be accomplished if the proposed rule comes out pretty quickly and if they work fast. That's not the speed I've worked in the past on this issue, but there is a greater sense of urgency. And then, of course, once there's a final rule, people can sue. And it's a big country, so maybe people will. There are questions of who would have standing and all that, which I'm not going to get into here. And then it depends on the election, but I don't see a heck of a lot of opposition, frankly, to changing from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3.
And so take from that what you will, but right here we've got two former high-ranking U.S. officials admitting that Schedule 3 is a done deal and it's just a matter of when, not if, and also highlighting that it's in the administration's best interest to act quickly and get this done before the election. And while there may be some pushback if it's coming from an organization like SAM, while they have money, they're certainly not credible, so we shouldn't have to worry. Unfortunately, though, the rumors of SAFE, while they've begun swirling, have fizzled out already, so just wanted to share this quote from Kirsty Gillibrand, or Gillibrand, however you say her name. "I would love it. I support SAFER. I also want to have an amendment to SAFER someday to also increase access to the markets so they can get access to the stock exchanges." Now, wouldn't that be great? Do we even need SAFER for that? Can Schedule 3 help rework that on the back end? And is this just more lip service? I think that unfortunately is. I'm sick and tired of these politicians at this point. But all this to highlight, it's like, apparently SAFE doesn't make it in and the stablecoin bill shelved because McConnell does not want the Safe Banking Act. Who gives a fuck what Mitch does or doesn't want? He's not the Speaker of the Senate, right? It's unbelievable. And like, this man shouldn't be in Congress anymore. He froze last year. The man should be put to bed and retired. And so, with that though, we had that DEA hearing earlier this week, and we thought maybe Ann Milgrim will comment on cannabis. Well, do the right thing with another banger. She confirmed that there will be a notice of proposed rulemaking in regards to cannabis rescheduling, which tells me let the process work itself out, and she decided not to comment at it as it would be inappropriate at the time deemed by her. And so some comments for context if you're interested. As always, links will be in the comments, but also we got a tweet earlier in the week from Kevin Shithead Sabet basically saying that, oh, Ann Milgrim didn't sign something. Like, okay, that doesn't mean that it didn't get signed. And so WallStreet 420 doing some great digging down here and providing past proof that if Ann Milgrim or the head of the DEA doesn't sign it, doesn't mean that it doesn't get signed by somebody else below them and still go into effect. So great find here from WallStreet 420. And yeah, this is in reaction to that shitty Marijuana Moment article. Well, another one from him. Does the OMB review of rescheduling fall under Section 3F1 significant rules subject to interagency review? This could be why it's taking longer than usual, as OMB reviews rules considered significant under criteria established by executive order. Rules designated as significant require additional interagency reviews and an assessment of the rule's costs and benefits. Sounds like the process. And apparently Section 3F1 significant rules are those regulatory actions that meet criteria of yada yada as amended by yada yada that will likely result in a massive impact to the economy of $200 million or more. And cannabis is a $30 billion market that still has to deal in cash that can't access banks. And so take this with a grain of salt, though. I'm just trying to present all the clues so that we can piece together the best possible picture ourselves and, of course, plan accordingly for your own situation. Now, he did add this down here, saying something about Kamala being involved, but then admin.law, who is a trained lawyer, said something down here. So if you want to read deeper into this, I definitely recommend grabbing the link. But last bit to highlight, which kind of wraps or ties this all together, again, Do the Right Thing and WallStreet 420. These guys are lights out. But Do the Right Thing essentially saying that according to the rulemaking process, OIRA may waive the review. Now, don't get your hopes up that they will, but if the Biden admin is trying to move expeditiously, they can, and that would all be in our best interest if they actually decide to do so. Could see proposed rule hit the Federal Register very soon, as in this week or next. But then get this, which I found was interesting. Within 10 working days, the administrator of OIRA will notify the DEA, DOJ if the rule is significant, and this kind of goes back to this, why it might be taking longer, because obviously it's a massive economic impact. If OIRA waives review, we could see the proposed rule published by the week of May 13th, which is next week coming up, since the rule was submitted on April 30th by Garland. So again, take this with a grain of salt. It would be great if this can play out as a potential timeline and we get something next week, because it almost seems like now every second week we're getting at least something from the US government. While this past week, it's pretty much just MSOs showing that they're stronger than ever and heading into profitability. But yeah, so take from that what you will. All the links will be in the comments. And with that, from Pablo, his latest, published May 5th, 2024, Rescheduling New Catalysts, Cannabis Sector Equity Research. And so a 24-page doc. Pablo's made some good calls in the past. He's also been quite wrong in many instances. And so full link in the comments if you wanted to go through that. But if it isn't reason enough as to why ending cannabis prohibition is long overdue, just to highlight the most revenue generated by cannabis sales in a single year. Let that sink in a new report from Marijuana Policy Project. And so this link will be next. I'm not going to go through it, but we'll put that in the comments. And I'll scroll through it a little bit just to show you. But main thing to highlight, this past year, 2023, a combined total of $4.1 billion in taxes brought in. And collectively, this surpasses roughly $20 billion since legal adult use cannabis started in the US. You cannot make this shit up. It's epic. So one of the many benefits of ending cannabis prohibition, no doubt. That's basically the chart we just saw, but it goes through certain states and breaks them down in more detail. So definitely check that out if you are interested. Link in the comments, and some studies as to why we ought to just deschedule cannabis outright, and why we'll take the incremental reform because it's better than the status quo. From Normal Report, seizure data suggests state legal cannabis market has significantly curbed demand for Mexican-grown cannabis. Yeah, no shit. Of course, when it's legal and you can have legal dollars being pumped into the economy to compete with the black market, obviously you're going to phase some of it out. As federal law enforcement agents intercepted a record low of 61,000 pounds of cannabis at the southern border in 2023, the total represents a 29% decline from 2022 and a 98% decline from 2013. What do you know? Yeah, obviously prohibition doesn't work, ending it does. And so with that, from Marijuana Moment, the only story, and I'm just going to feature the headline because it's common sense though, right? Most Americans who have tried cannabis or psychedelics have had positive experiences. Study finds. What do you know? Anyone that tries it realizes it's not the boogeyman, and the only people to hate and discriminate towards plant users still are the paid fraud prohibitionists. You can't make this shit up. And so results down here if you wanted to pause to check it out. Otherwise, you can grab the full link in the comments to go through it further. But this looks at people surveyed on cannabis, psilocybin, LSD, and MDMA. And so with that, we've got this one from Ohio Northern University, essentially though, cannabis effects on improving agitation in patients with dementia. You can pause to read the details here, but conclusion research has shown that medical cannabis, when used to treat agitation in dementia patients, is just as effective as the standard pharmacological treatments. Well, that's why Big Pharma is terrified of ending prohibition. This provides an alternative option for patients who are not responding to typical treatments. Very promising, and this is as of April 19th last month. Another study out of the American College of Sports Medicine from last year, but this is my first time coming across it, and these are more interesting findings on how stoners are not actually lazy, but physical activity and health outcomes among college students who use cannabis. And so you can pause to read the purpose and methods, but 246 students were looked at. 65% female, so not necessarily the best split sample, but results, cannabis users had slightly higher average physical activity as opposed to non-users. Fascinating. And I work out far more than a lot of non-cannabis users that I know, so definitely proof is in the pudding. While on average, though, non-user sleep score, systolic blood pressure, and diastolic blood pressure were slightly higher than those of cannabis users, respectively. And ideally, I think you want to have lower blood pressure. Maybe you want to have higher sleep score. I don't know, but fascinating results. Conclusion, contrary to public belief, cannabis users did not suffer from non-users in terms of their physical activity levels, sleep quality, or blood pressure. Furthermore, outcomes were not affected by frequency of use. And so more studies needed like this, hence why we ought to have ended cannabis prohibition 50 years ago or never even put it in the CSA in the first place. But as always, links will be in the comments if you want to go through them further yourself. While from Springer Link, in silico, investigation of cannabinoids from cannabis sativa leaves as a potential anti-cancer drug to inhibit MAPK, ERK signaling pathway and EMT induction from May 6, 2024. Now, this one is very technical and I don't understand it quite well, but I just thought worth pointing out is that among the 6 cannabinoids, CBD and THC exerted maximum binding affinities with proteins of MAPK, ERK signaling pathways, and their pharmacokinetics and drug likeness related profiles suggest that these cannabinoids could be superlative inhibitors in cancer treatment. That's more reason to study, as we should have been doing so for the last 5 decades. And so full link in the comments if you want to go through the whole study. And if you happen to know more about what this means or have a background in medicine and can explain this in layman's terms in the comments, please do so, as I'd love to understand this a little bit better. But with that, on to MSO news, as we did make it onto Wall Street Bets after Green Thumb and Trulieve released their earnings. And according to this person, MSOS ETF top holdings smash earnings expectations. Some were certainly better than others, which we'll get into. And while I spend next to no time on Reddit anymore, it's where I started out in like 2018 when I was a beginner, definitely getting a lot of hopium from there. The good news is, I mean, hey, we're all in the same boat, but what we've all been waiting for seems to finally be coming around. And the good news is the MSOs are a lot further along now than they were in 2021 when they were, worth 10 times what they are now. But Green Thumb Industries reports first quarter 2024 results. And since Green Thumb had the best results of them all, I'm only going to spend time reading through them just to highlight essentially what's the best thing to be looking for in a seasoned company that's able to turn a profit despite having to pay 280E. And then I'll invite you to pause to read the rest. But good news is we have these breakdowns for layman's investors like us from Cannavestments. So thank you, Nick, for doing those. So highlights of the first quarter. First quarter revenue of $276 million increased 11% over the prior year period. So year over year up 11%. Highlighting a bit of growth, cash at quarter end, $224 million. GAAP net income for the first quarter of $31 million or 13 cents a share, increased 240% year over year. Adjusted EBITDA of $91 million or 33% of revenue, increased 19% over the year period. Cash flow from operations of $84 million, increased 12% compared to Q1 of 2023. And then purchased 1 million shares back for a total of $13.6 million. So, hey, great job, Green Thumb. You guys crushed it. Ben is following in Warren's footsteps, I think, based on how he runs a company, but highlighting what Cannavestments has to say. Standout showing from GTI grows in Q1 with results ahead of consensus, improved margins, and record cash flow generation. Opportunities abound with leading positions in near-term adult use markets in Ohio and Minnesota starting March 2025. Forgot about that one. And potentially Florida, PA down the line. And so Green Thumb looking better than ever. And keep in mind, this is with 280E. So imagine when 280E goes away. Damn! It's going to be the healthiest looking, balance sheet wise company, or company balance sheet wise. I don't know why I said that backwards, but extra notes from the call too, if you wanted to go through this. And so as always, links will be in the comments, but a bit more here, just if anyone's interested on what questions might have been asked, what people have to say. But with that, Trulieve reports first quarter 2024 results demonstrating core business strength and cash generation. Doing a bit better. And again, had they not bought Harvest, fascinating to see how much cash flow they'd be producing from Florida alone, even with medical and 280E. But still, all the highlights here if you wanted to pause to read. While jumping over to Nick's breakdown of Trulieve as it loads. Blowout quarter from Trulieve to start the year. Good growth well ahead of expectations. Significant margin expansion and improved tax-adjusted cash flow on the back of strong retail sales as the company continues to fortify their position ahead of the November adult use ballot in Florida. So pause to read if you're interested here for the layman's breakdown of Trulieve, while Verano Holdings, who did kick it off first on Wednesday, announcing their first quarter 2024 financial results, generated $21 million in revenue, exceeding guidance, and increased gross profit by nearly 300 basis points year over year. So more here if you wanted to pause to read the highlights for Verano, if you're a shareholder, if you're interested. As always, links will be in the comments. While from Cannavestments, what does he say? Solid showing from Verano Brands, but somewhat mixed showing in Q1. Results were largely in line with the reduced guidance they gave in Q4. Margins were stable, but OPEX elevated with new store openings. Cash flow still strong with Ohio adult use on the horizon. Looking at June, so next month, and potentially Florida, PA down the line as well. And so more here if you wanted to pause to read. While Thursday afternoon, we got Curaleaf reporting their earnings, and good to see them produce operating cash flow from operations of $46 million and free cash flow of $33 million, though they did not produce a net income. Though I'm not trained in finance officially, so I don't exactly get how that works yet. Though first quarter's financial highlights and operational highlights here if you wanted to pause to read. Otherwise, full link is in the comments. Though Cannavestments has not provided his deep dive into Curaleaf yet, though once he does publish that on Twitter or I come across it, I'll put that in the comments so you can check it out. While a few more, this one is the Cannabis Co., one of my larger new positions. Certainly higher risk, but higher reward if they can keep their shit together and cut costs. Though it doesn't look like they've done a great job at that, unfortunately. So less than impressed, but I imagine there's still going to be an attractive buyout at some point for a market cap much higher than where they're at, or hopefully in a few quarters with new markets coming on and increased volume, they'll see some better results. But more here if you wanted to pause to read top 5 markets by revenue in Q1 and then top 5 markets by adjusted EBITDA in Q1, while operational highlights for first quarter and financial highlights for first quarter if anyone's interested. Thank you, Cannavestments, for this one. Unfortunately, weak start to the year from Columbia Care with results behind expectations, weak margins, a lack of cash flow, and a balance sheet that limits the company's ability to reinvest into the business. Not ideal. There are opportunities in the footprint, but whether they can take advantage is uncertain. So a lottery ticket for me, but I definitely still think there's so much value here that's still just not recognized. But hey, I could be wrong. We'll see. And TerrAscend reports first quarter 2024 financial results. Net revenue of $80.6 million, an increase of 16% year over year. Thank you, New Jersey, though I thought you'd have more of an impact. You probably would if you opened more stores. While cash flow from operations of $13.3 million and free cash flow of $10.5 million in the quarter. So nice to see another company profitable, much like Green Thumb, despite, 280 and everything. So imagine once that goes away, what a breath of fresh air that'll be for the industry and everyone that's been discriminated against unfairly for so damn long. And again, Cannavestments has not done the deep dive for TerrAscend either, and so similar to Curaleaf, I'll put that in the comments once that comes through. But with that, MSOs continuing to focus on what they can control, keep their heads down and open more shops, as Verano accelerates retail expansion in Central Florida with opening of the company's 75th location and 140th retail location in the nation. So more here if you wanted to pause to read, whether you are a shareholder of Verano or want to learn more about them. As always, the link will be in the comments. While Trulieve continuing to do the same, open medical cannabis dispensary in Stuart, Florida. And so all these MSOs are anticipating adult use to be voted on and approved in November and likely going to effect at some point late summer 2025 is the rough timeline we have as of right now. And so good to see Kim focusing on what they can control and expanding their footprints now while it's still cheap and affordable for them to do so. So more here if you wanted to pause to read. Well, a few more articles on said MSO earnings from the Green Market Report. So just in case anyone's interested in reading, it's a third perspective as Trulieve tops revenue mark as tax refunds roll in. However, take this one with a grain of salt because I found a pretty big typo dang early on as he says Adam Jackson, the multi-state operator, also posted net income of $23 million. They actually reported a net loss of $23 million. So that's a pretty big mistake there. But nonetheless, Trulieve does seem to be improving and cutting costs, making improvements from the previous quarter. So more here if you wanted to pause to read. While from Green Market Report, so again, take these with a grain of salt, but cannabis revenue slips as it preps for Ohio. And while we thought revenue would go up, especially with new markets coming online, Missouri being one of them, not as big as we thought. And I think New Jersey would have been the other, but cannabis shored up its cash as it gears up for Ohio and has stayed focused on trimming expenses. And so despite the earnings being less than stellar, this is ultimately all we can hope for because Ohio will be a new market that will turn on, that will give them a bit more of an advantage there. And as long as they can keep cutting costs, their balance sheet, I think, can survive. So more here if you wanted to pause to read. Well, a little bit more down here if you wanted to pause to read. But yeah, lots of good potential. And I mean, hey, Virginia, that would have been nice if they worked in the best interest of Virginians and not try to, steal people's freedoms. While lastly, Canopy Growth confirms Canopy USA's exercise of options to acquire Wana and Jetty. And so it looks like Canopy USA is going to exercise the options to become owners of these U.S. assets. Interesting, and this comes a week after Sundial and Sunstream USA had some sort of a deal that was similar to this. And so more here if you wanted to pause to read. Following the initial closing, Canopy will own 100% of the outstanding equity interests in Wana and approximately 75% of the outstanding shares of Jetty. And so does this mean that Canopy is officially entering into the U.S., or will it only line up with, the rescheduling announcement and then all that to play out happen and then this goes into effect afterwards? I have no idea. Let me know in the comments if you know more, though. Of course, I'm just thinking out loud, and trying to, paint as clear a picture for you guys. But with that, from the Dales Report, earnings breakdowns from the past week. And so if you wanted a breakdown from Curaleaf or TerraSend, which Cannavestments wasn't able to provide, there are links here. I will put this link in the comments so that you can check them out if you are interested. Well, on to state news, I believe. So thank you, Hirsch Jane, for this good tweet. As New Hampshire could be state number 25 in June of 2024 if they were to move quickly on this new bill that's being approved and apparently moving through their legislature. And so we'll keep you posted on that. But what's more promising is Florida, South Dakota, and North Dakota, possibly state 26, 27, 28 on the November ballot. And so 28 adult use states by end of year would require some luck, but seems very possible. In notable change, 8 of 28 would be red states: Arkansas, Florida, Missouri, Montana, New Hampshire, North Dakota, Ohio, and South Dakota. New Hampshire more purple than red, but GOP trifecta at state level. So take from that what you will, but still many new markets to come online and still a lot of growth opportunity, I do think, for existing MSOs. And while the big news of the week, as we have been vindicated, I'm one of the few people probably out there covering the shit show that the New York market has become, all due to terrible policy at the regulator level, essentially. As Times Union reports, New York cannabis director out as Hochul has finally had enough of them embarrassing her, and she announces overhaul of the troubled office that has essentially just tried to introduce a socialist model of business for this industry, where the government controls everything, including the money, and they only hand it out where they want, and effectively they just... It's like a famine of resources. They tell everyone and they give promises that we're going to give you all this, and then they hoard it, and then everyone else spends money on things that they're promised, and when they don't get the licenses to actually run the shops, here we are. It's crazy. But that's essentially how you can think of socialist policies in practice. From the top down, it's all about control and ultimately starving or creating equity, equal outcomes for everybody else, the ones that you promised, and hence why that just never works. Just, hey, we're finally seeing some action being taken as Chris Alexander, the executive director of the State Office of Cannabis Management, has been asked by Governor Kathy Hochul's administration to step down following a review of his handling of the troubled rollout of New York's retail cannabis industry. And so I've been through this plenty. I'm not going to spend much time on it. I invite you to grab the link if you wanted to go through it. And so big shout out to Joe Rossi for pointing out this government malpractice. And the worst part is it was done on purpose. These fucking Marxists don't realize that everything that goes Marxist, communist, or socialist does turn to shit. I encourage everyone defending this program to read this report in full. That should be everyone at the Office of Cannabis Management. Strikingly, OCM underspent its fiscal year 2023-2024 budget by $26 million, leaving resources untapped that could have been leveraged to clear its significant licensing backlog. Why didn't you hand out the license that you promised? Because you didn't want anyone to succeed, because you're Satan in the human body. Your soul's gone. You've sold your soul a long time ago. Structurally, OCM's executive director has 8 direct reports, most of whom do not oversee operational areas, led by a single executive deputy director and chief operating officer, doing licensing and enforcement all himself. Of course you can't. That doesn't make any sense. Individuals and units crafting policy are also involved in the process of individual applications, which can create an appearance of conflicts of interest, no doubt. I don't like this guy. I'm not going to give him money. Ooh, that guy's cute. I'm going to give him money. Combined with an application process with unspecified oversight, QA procedures, and end-to-end internal control mechanisms, an environment of unclear governance and limited transparency has been created. These are just unserious people, and they've fucked over so many New Yorkers, especially those that they wanted to work in their best interest in the first place, those harmed by the war on drugs. In an environment where OCM has failed to meet communicated timelines, many applicants have invested tens of thousands of dollars at risk, paid a non-refundable fee, and are unable to find where their licenses in the review process. This lack of transparency, combined with the fact that illegal cannabis storefronts proliferate rapidly, because it makes more sense to just break the law and pay the fines because you're not going to face any consequences than jump through the hurdles and work with these fucking idiots leaves many applicants and the general public deeply frustrated and mistrustful of the OCM. And so this is the actual report, 31 pages. And again, one example of the type of person, and this was their former chief equity officer. This is the kind of shit no one will miss. It's mockery, it's condescending, it's unsympathetic, and it is what happens when you get the mind virus. It is the woke archetype, perfectly exemplified here by Damien Fagon.
Right. Well, they can also go bankrupt waiting for licensing, though, right? Like while they are. I mean, well, because they're supposed to be just.
How does he ask that question? Is he that stupid?
Waiting, sitting on their hands.
And they're supposed to be making money to pay their rent. Right. Like, no one's telling people, and this is also something I get frustrated with. I literally got an email about this the other day, like, I spent millions building your dispensary. Where's my license? No one told you to do that. Stop doing that. We're going to issue, because we're starting out, again, like I said again, 1,000 licenses are about to go out. No state has ever started with 1,000 licenses. We're creating a shitload of opportunity for people and a very accessible application that takes a couple hours to fill out, and for social security, $5. So, get the license first, brother. You know what I mean? Like,
you promised them licenses for 3 years. Do your fucking job, you coward. Like, what a loser. And so Brad Racino, our favorite New York source, just going to live tweet my reading of the OGS report because damn, a thread. I'd like you to pause to read, as Brad Racino has been my longest running New York source, and I've been referencing him for a few years now. And so while he does touch on a few of the interesting finds that Joe Rossi pointed out, that was certainly government malpractice, he goes a bit deeper. And so I invite you to pause to read. I'll bring you down a little bit more. Pause to read, and I love this here. No reporting. You don't say! Of course, the conflict of interest that this would fucking create. Unbelievable. So OCM chose to implement a high-stakes application lottery. Not a good idea. Woof. And so more here. And that's it. I'll put the link in the comments. While it is not New York this time, it is more fraudulent activity from cannabis prohibitionists, so we got to do our thing and expose them and call them out. Did I read this right from the Dank-Informer? The anti-cannabis lobbying nonprofit SAM received taxpayer money for their funding through a complex scheme in shady organizations in California. What? Really? So apparently this is the source from Filter Mag. Let's see if it works. I tried to open it earlier and it didn't, but this comes off of a tweet from Sasha Warren, who says MSO leaders should fund a financial investigation into SAM. They 100% should have started this years ago. A 24-year veteran of law enforcement wrote this piece in 2019, and there's a high likelihood of serious financial malfeasance at SAM. Should we maybe start a GoFundMe and try and get the ball going ourselves, and then have the MSO leaders take over once they get to keep some profits after removing 280E? Let me know in the comments if any of you have experience fundraising like that, because I don't, but hey, not a bad idea. Why not expose them once and for all? And so this is the article. I haven't read through it, but I will today. The rank of hypocrisy of cannabis prohibition advocates taxpayer funding. But it's crazy to think that they got taxpayer funding out of some shady shit like that in California. Of all places, they'd be able to get away with it. And this comes off of just more shenanigans. But I love that people are calling them out and realizing that we probably can do more. And so this source will be in the comments if you wanted to read through that. But hey, if anyone does have experience raising money or a GoFundMe, let me know in the comments and how I might be able to chat with you more, because I think might be an idea there. So with that, from MJ Biz Daily, happy to hear wholesale cannabis pricing beat expectations for 2024, and hopefully that means they're on the way up. The spot index decreased by 8% in 2023 and rose by 1% to 1,024 per pound in 2024. So slightly back up, which is a good sign. We look to the rest of 2024 and 2025. The growth story is pretty simple. We just need new markets coming on, like Ohio, like Minnesota, possibly sooner than later, like Florida, like Pennsylvania. And so mixed bag for flower prices. More here if you wanted to pause to read, or grab the link in the comments to go through this sort of interactive information here. But definitely seems like Maryland and new markets that have just turned on are leading the way. Although Washington, interesting to see that price go up. Loosen regulations, I imagine that's going to help. Well, prices down in certain markets like California, Arizona. Hard to compete where the weather's so beautiful and you can grow illicit year-round. And more information down here if anyone's interested and want to pause to read. But hey, the signs appear as if the prices for wholesale are going up, and that would possibly signal rotation in the cycle. But this one, folks, another great tweet from Sasha Warren highlighting how far we've come. Just look at the progress at the state level since 2019. While since 2021, cannabis investors have been manipulated and gaslit into believing all good news is actually bad. Collapse the share price after every good news event and then run a narrative that more is needed. And this definitely rings true when you hear that in 2020, 2021, Wall Street doesn't want to pay retail prices. And when we hit peaks, they're like, no, we're going to push it all the way back down till we can get in low. So hey, just remember, we've come such a long way, folks. And based on everything I've tried to show in my videos week after week, it's a when not if scenario. It's just not in our control. It'll happen when it happens. So plan accordingly for your own situation. But hey, talk about progress. That's $30 billion last year alone, 32 I think total, that still can't even access banks. And so whether safer happens or not, Schedule 3 is happening. So just take a deep breath, enjoy the nice weather going forward, and let me know in the comments if you enjoyed this video, folks. But that is it for today's episode. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. Did you learn anything from the stories? Let me know if you have any questions or suggestions, and I'd be happy to address them. Otherwise, subscribe below if you don't want to miss any future videos, and I will catch you for This Week in Cannabis next week. Have a great weekend, everybody. Take care.